the cloud. I am also going to pull up a poll to see who's newly with us today. Just to see if we have anybody new, it helps us know who, if we need to slow down or go more quickly with our introductory things. So I'm again putting the attendance and the resources in again for people who've come in since after I did that. And I'll leave that up for a moment. Oh, we do have at least one person new. So thank you. Fantastic. I'll go ahead and end the poll. We have at least a couple people new, so I won't worry about sharing results. That's good for us to know as we get started. We will keep in mind that we will be making heterogeneous groups so that people can be sharing with each other. If anybody's new, you can kind of talk to people you haven't talked to before, and even if you aren't new, you'll get to talk to people you haven't talked to before, I'm sure. So we always start with a quote here from Louisa Moats, and I think that is really crucial to keep in mind that when we're working with older learners who are struggling in their literacy skills, that they can learn to read and write if they are taught those foundational literacy skills that they might have missed, and that they have ample opportunity to apply those skills in meaningful text reading. And obviously you can tell that I would add writing as well, teaching reading through writing. We do have, Heidi, would you like to do these next few slides?
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. We would like to start today with a land acknowledgement to respect and affirm the tribal sovereignty of the lands and to acknowledge the importance of the school district connections with their neighboring tribes and services. Of course, at OSPI, we do have our division and our Office of Native Education, ONE, which has many, many great resources. And I will grab that and pop that in the chat for you here in just a moment. We very much invite you to add to the chat the lands in which you reside and or are zooming in from today. So we'll just give you a moment to do that.
I'm in the same place as Heidi. Nina, you're up on the peninsula, aren't you? Feel free to keep those coming while I add on a few other things.
Before I speak, I'm putting the Office of Native Education in the chat here because there are so many wonderful resources on that page.
Thank you. I'll make sure to add it to our resource guide.
Thank you, Alicia. So as we begin our work today, we also want to ground ourselves in OSPI's equity statement. So this equity statement reads that each student, family, and community possess strengths and cultural knowledge that benefits their peers, educators, and schools. So for OSPI and for our state, more generally speaking, ensuring educational equity really goes beyond equality, right? It requires educational leaders to examine the ways current policies and practices result in disparate outcomes for our students of color, our students living in poverty, students receiving special education and English learner services, students who identify as LGBTQIA+, and highly mobile student populations. Moreover, ensuring educational equity requires educational leaders, such as ourselves here today, to develop an understanding of historic context, engage students, families, and community representatives as partners in decision-making, and actively dismantle systemic barriers, replacing them with policies and practices that ensure all students have access to the instruction and support they need to succeed in our schools. And I just want to add that all of this really resonates with me, but that last bit, especially with the work we're doing here today, ensuring all students, I know, Alicia, that's something you speak to over and over again, that they have access, that we remove those barriers to that instruction and support that they need to be really successful. So really appreciate everyone's presence in this room today.
Well, and Heidi, when you bring that up, it makes me think of a book that I just finished. I got on the plane, actually. Subtle Acts of Exclusion, How to Understand, Identify, and Stop Microaggressions. And so this is one I highly recommend when we're talking about just shifting our mindset to think about how are we making sure we are including everyone and not creating a feeling of exclusion to anyone.
Alicia, do you have the author of that text? I haven't read that one.
I'll put it in the chat while you're talking next.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I did click there we go.
We also want to take a moment to acknowledge the pain and trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States, and to note that we stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as and/or are categorized as African American. And we also acknowledge the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and individuals with disabilities. We commit to centering our work to dismantle systemic racism and disrupt ableist structure.
Thank you, Heidi.
And it sounds like this book is just going to be such a great
yeah, it was a great
for that.
airport find. So for those of you who are familiar with the simple view of reading, you know that it's not quite so simple. We think about E equals MC squared and how that's really a simple formula that represents hugely complex system. When we're talking about how to make sure everyone is getting what they need through an MTS, a multi-tiered system of support, we need to make sure that we have the systems in place, the instruction, and therefore the tiered system. Everything needs to have both of those. And like the simple view of reading, you notice we have a multiplication symbol here so that you need to have both, otherwise your system is not going to be successful. And one of the things we want to draw attention to is that we have some supports throughout the state. We have each ESD has regional implementation coordinators, and each ESD has regional literacy coordinators like Nina and some of our other partners who aren't able to be here tonight. We'll introduce some of those in a moment. But really, our framework where we're paying attention today is through that instruction and curriculum piece, where we're looking at instructional routines, differentiated instruction, understanding the components of literacy, systematic, explicit, evidence-based curriculum, and specific interventions. But and actually what I'm going to do is share in a link to, let's see, copy link address to learn more about this framework, if that's something you're interested in, or if you have systems people who would be helpful on that. But today, as we work together, perhaps I should have put this earlier, I do ask that as we share and talk to each other, it's helpful to have your district listed after your name, as I see many of you have already done. Mary, I'll have to add VPS for you. Because you mentioned it to me. But so you can do that yourself, or you can put it into the chat if you don't know how to change your name. But I'll do a quick little tour. You go to the toolbar on the bottom, go to participants, find your name, and then next to it you can see there's the more option, and rename is one of those possibilities. You can also hide the self view, and that's something so you don't see yourself in the reflection. Also, we do ask that you are muted when not talking. However, that I think it's set so that people are muted upon entry. If I'm wrong, I will fix that. But do feel free to unmute at any point in time to contribute, question, and engage in the process. We also, though, ask that you raise your electronic hand, because unless you're Heidi, Nina, or right now Paulette, I can't see you actually doing this. I'll have to click on the arrow to see Jennifer and anybody else who might have their camera on as well. So please use your electronic hand to engage. You can find those into your reactions button. We will also be asking you to engage via annotations. You can find those under view options. There's a little pencil that says annotate. And I don't know, I'm curious, Nina and Heidi, if yours still pulls up this bottom toolbar that you can move around, or if it's pulling up a horizontal one, which I need to get a new screenshot of.
I still have the bottom tool.
Oh, good. Then my look
is
is still good. Mine looks really different. I'm taking a while to get used to it. If you have that toolbar that Heidi says she has, you'll notice that there's a format that will change the color of whatever you're drawing or writing with. And I think, Nina, am I pass it? Nope, this is still me. So we do invite you, as we say, to work together. It's helpful to get the most out of our experience tonight if you stay engaged, if you recognize perspectives, share and listen openly, expect and accept non-closure, use the technology to enhance your learning, give yourselves and each other grace. That's why we know there are a lot of people who signed up who aren't able to make it. That's why we're recording, because we know real life and it's the day after Halloween. So some of you may be recovering or helping your kids recover from their sugar comas. But we do invite you also to put something into the chat box or to stamp something that either stands out to you that you appreciate, or if there's something we missed that you think it would be useful, please put that into the chat. We do have opportunities for you to engage. We will be using this icon when there is an engagement opportunity. And we do have a Jamboard that I'm going to add in into the chat box, where you can ask questions anonymously if that's your preference. So I'll jump over to our Jamboard. I have it up already. I've been putting these resources in. If you've come in after I've done so, perhaps Nina or Heidi can grab it and add in both the attendance link and the resources. You'll see up at the top, it's the link to the Jamboard. And so this should not be editable for you. If we have it editable, oops, please let me know and I will fix that. But the Jamboard is an editable option. We just don't want it editable in case anybody accidentally deletes anything. So please let me know if I'm wrong on that. So on the Jamboard, the first frame is just kind of an intro to let you know where you are. Second frame, you can add in where you are, literally. So Nina is up here in 114 region. I'm in Olympia. And Heidi, I don't think you were with us last time. Would you have a color preference?
Oh, pink.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also, as Alicia knows, down here in Olympia. Thanks for adding me.
So you can just put in, and if you'd like to put in your role or anything like Leslie, Ruby put, I appreciate that. And Heidi, I don't remember if you're north or south of me, but you're in the Olympia area, as am I. So we'll just kind of
you, like just a little bit.
All right, we'll put you there then. And if somebody accidentally did a blank one, all you have to do is either edit it to type on it or cancel and edit and delete it. So you can use those as well. And then you'll see frame 3 is a parking lot. If you have questions, I should do a fall themed one, but right now I'll update that maybe later. And then there'll be some activities that we'll engage with later on. Okay, so that leads us into the introduction part. We do have a few new people, so we'll start with some introductions and then I'll pass it off to Nina, I think, who's can take us from there. I did click. Sometimes it's been a little slow lately. So while I'm doing this, you can feel free to put into the Jamboard or a chat your name, your role, your grade level, your content area, anything that you'd like to share with us on the Jamboard or in the chat. So back here, this was not this year. I think this was maybe last year or the year before. I'm the one up in the upper left. We had some fun with this, but I with ESD 113. And I've been with ESD 113 for 7 years now. Prior to that, I taught higher ed. I taught special education, people becoming special ed teachers, as well as special ed content for gen ed teachers. Prior to that, I taught high school, before that, middle, before that, elementary. So I kind of worked my way up from the early grades up to graduate school. And now I get to teach people who are already teachers. And it's, to me, the most rewarding thing. I will add that I actually have now a middle schooler who with dyslexia, and I have a high schooler with autism. So I have the parent perspective that I didn't have when I was a teacher. My son was born while I was teaching high school, and my daughter was born while I was teaching at the university level. So I think that really has shifted and helped me see things in a different way. So I'm going to pass it on to Nina, who's in the middle, and then Heidi on the right. The other 3 who are our partners who are not able to be with us tonight, Effie is on the bottom. I'm sure many of you who are in 112 know Effie. She's your regional literacy coordinator down in Vancouver area. In the middle, that's Terry Hernandez, who's the regional literacy coordinator in Yakima, one of ESD 105. And on the right is Rebecca Estock, who is with the, Heidi, you might have to help me here, the Center for Improvement of Student Learning.
Office of Student, yeah.
Office of Student Success.
The acronym is OSSI.
Yes. At OSPI, so she's been a partner for us as well. So I'll hand it to Nina, then, or actually Heidi, why don't you go first since Nina's going to take it after.
Sounds great. I think it's the Office of Student and System Improvement.
That sounds right. Yes.
That's what OSPI stands for. Yes. So it's so nice to be here with you all this evening. My name again is Heidi Ayala. I am the Associate Director of Secondary English Language Arts with OSPI. I've been now with the agency for a little over 2 years, and it has been my absolute pleasure in those 2 years to get to know Alicia and Nina and all the folks you see on the screen, plus all of the other regional literacy coordinators, being able to collaborate with and learn from their expertise and to really be in spaces like this with you all. Prior to coming to OSPI, I had taught for over a decade in higher education, as well as I was a high school English teacher. So these topics are very near and dear to my heart when we're thinking about how to help students at the secondary level with reading and writing who may need additional assistance at the Tier 1 level. And Nina, with that, I will pass things over to you.
Thanks, Heidi. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Sotomayor Andrew. I'm the pumpkin in the middle with my two boys. They're a little bit older now. They wouldn't let me take them to the pumpkin patch this year. I was really sad about that. But I have been working with different areas of OSPI since 2014 as a systems and improvement coach for data and literacy. Now I work with ESD 114 as a literacy coordinator. Previous to that, I started my career as a middle school, high school ELA and reading teacher. And then became a literacy coach at the high school level. So I literally live and breathe reading and writing and everything when it comes to that. And then after having my two boys, realize how important it is to really push that further, because I want my kiddos to succeed as well. So I'm really excited to come along with you guys today on this journey for the next hour and a half or so. And we're going to go ahead and move into a little activator, something that I like to use in my classrooms and also with adults. So today we're just going to use jack-o'-lanterns. We found a really fun kind of Halloween themed, and on a scale of 0 to 10, which jack-o'-lantern and how are you feeling today? So feel free to put into the chat which, or 1 to 9, which jack-o'-lantern you're choosing and maybe why you chose that jack-o'-lantern. We'll take a moment just to decompress.
Is 0. I'm not even on that page.
I know.
So you could annotate or put a number into the chat.
I see 6 already going in going in a million directions. 6 looks like he's on an amusement park ride.
I'll add some stamps for what you're hearing. You
Oh, and then also I forgot about that. If you guys want to use your annotation stamp from your toolbar, feel free to do that also.
I see a 1. I like it a little bit spicy. 6 is too much to do. I hear a 10. Wait. Thanks, Angela. I'll put it over here.
Oh, 5. A lot of your kids were out today.
Oh, I
They
love
had
it.
candy
Today's a good
comas.
day. I love it. Every day
Yeah.
should be a fantastic day, right? Oh, I see a 3 from
Did
Nadia.
anyone pick 9 yet? I feel like 9 was our pumpkins looked like yesterday.
9's like if you ate too much candy last night, I think.
That's how I felt towards the end of the night. I woke up with a little bit of a sugar coma feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I love how Jen is saying it's Wednesday and halfway through the work week. Having the holiday on a Tuesday is really thrown me off. I keep thinking it's Thursday today for some reason.
Mary, you picked 8. I had to see if someone picked 8. Look at 8. He's all smushed. He's the pumpkin after like a week of being outside too long.
I think we have a little bit of everything, although we don't have a 9, which is a good thing. I'm glad we had 9 in there for fun, but you got it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a 9. I will claim 9 for sure. I really appreciate yesterday. My son and I were carving pumpkins, and 9 was what we looked like at the end of it. It was just, there was everywhere. So thank you for everybody for participating. Hopefully this was kind of a fun thing. And it's really easy to Google pictures of activators for students, or if you're running a teacher meeting, or even parents coming, that would be a fun way to kind of start your meeting with them. So just wanted to share something with you before we get started. And now we're gonna, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's a good way to get in the right brain too, before we get into such left brain.
Yes, that's a good way to think of it. Yeah, because we got to move our brains around. Last time we met, we talked about standards and assessments. Today, we're going to be talking about building awareness of the science of reading and structured literacy. And then you can see kind of the progression of the dates and the titles moving forward. So please continue to come along this journey with us.
I'll also put in the chat box for you the registration link. If you have, whoops, that didn't work. I have to right click on it. If you have any colleagues or anyone else you know who would be interested, you can enroll in any time and jump into any one of these separately. They don't have to be concurrent. There's my copy link address. Okay.
Thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome. Here we go.
So just a review, this is what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to go over a review, reflect, and connect, and I'll take you guys through that. We're going to go into some new learning and resources around science of reading and structured literacy. We're going to have an opportunity today for practice for application. We're going to get into small groups and things like that. We're going to get on the Jamboard, and then we're going to have our closure and next steps.
I was just adding that may not be new to everyone, so I had it set reminders.
Perfect. And then if you need it anytime, there's an attendance link in there as well. But we also have a link to resources. So a lot of the goodies that we're talking about today, and then some, will be in that link.
All right.
So let us know if you need us to add that at any time. Thanks. So we're just going to go into review, reflect, and connect from last time. Last time we met, we talked about standards and assessments. We talked a little bit about essential standards, why it's important to think about vertical alignment. And we talked about what unpacking prerequisite skills can do when addressing supports for our students. We talked about purposes and kinds of assessments. We looked at benchmarking, progress monitoring, and we talked about what diagnostics could look like. And then we also talked a little bit about reading and writing fluency. So you're going to see a little bit about that as just a reminder. Going into the next slide, this is what we used when we talked about unpacking standards. And thinking about that triangle, we have the standard at the top, and thinking about what are those explicit skills that are necessary when teaching that standard, and listing those underneath and addressing those with our students in a whole group setting, and then moving down into those implicit or assessment skills that we want to think about for our students as well. And so those would, you have an opportunity to kind of have a space to write those out and start planning and thinking about what are some of those supports that you might not necessarily have to be super in-pointed about, but always want to engage your students around. And then this is what we shared last time around benchmark and progress monitoring, thinking about who might need help when giving a benchmark assessment, when to do it. We talked about 3 times per year, especially around reading and math. With progress monitoring, it's an opportunity to see also if what you're doing with your students is working. There were 2 ways to kind of address that. We could do that individually or as a class, do a check for comprehension. And then there's about 36 weeks of monitoring 1 time per week. And we talked about using the oral reading fluency, which is an ORF. And then we talked about diagnostic assessments as well, thinking about what skills do the students that we currently are supporting right now, what are they coming in with, and what are they going to need as they move forward? And what does the student already know? So almost doing like a little pre-assessment with them, checking in so that we can do maybe an extra bulk of additional teaching around certain pieces if we're noticing a group of students are really lacking that. Anything you guys want to add? Alicia or Heidi? Okay.
Well, yes, actually, there's been an interesting conversation about where does formative assessment fit in here? And frankly, I mean, I feel like it fits into the progress monitoring because it informs what we're doing every day, which progress monitoring may be a little bit more formal about that. So I think that that's another piece that could be added. But I think the diagnostics could also be formative because it informs what we do. So I think that it's definitely not that, the formal benchmarking, but I think it's the informal data collection that we do every day to see whether or not our students are gaining from our instruction.
Yeah, I love how you said that. And then also thinking about when you're doing formative assessments with your students, you're going through a formative assessment, you're actually, like you said, diagnosing what your next step is going to be. So they work hand in hand every time. So it's just like a
progress
beautiful
monitoring and the
little,
diagnostic.
yeah.
I agree.
And I'll just add, I like what you're both saying about intention and like moving forward with intention into your practice. So very much resonates with me as well.
Yeah, like even thinking about a vocabulary pre-assessment with my students, if I already have a list of vocabulary I want to address with them and I hand it out to them and I have them kind of go through and identify words they know and words they don't know, already it's giving me a jumping off point of like, what do I really need to focus on? And we always notice patterns. You will notice them right away. And it'll give you an opportunity. Oh my God, they need help with prefixes. They bombed it on this section. Every single word they missed with this prefix. And so that can just be a quick fix too with our students. So I love how doing little quick assessments like that can really kind of pinpoint your instruction, and it can minimize extra time you're spending on things that maybe they already know.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So fluency, there's always like the debate, right? But I, as a reading teacher, think it's really important to provide opportunities for us to check in on our students with their fluency. So ORFs are really handy to utilize. There's different ways you can use them. If you get your kids into small groups, then you can take an opportunity in ORF students, and you don't have to do them all at the same time. But when you're doing that, you're listening to them reading, and you're listening for certain components of their reading. So that's their expression and the volume, the way they phrase things, the smoothness to that phrasing, and including like the pace that they're going through. And even though our students may read quickly, that can affect sometimes their comprehension. So it's really nice when you are able to engage on an oral fluency assessment with your students, because you can provide them feedback. And they can hear from somebody to say to them, you know what, you don't have to read it that fast. Read it a little bit slower, but a little bit more direct, and then you're going to get an opportunity to remember what you're saying. Or maybe they're reading very slowly and there's certain pieces they're stumbling on. Well, when you go into a small group with them later, or when you go into one-on-one time with them, that's something you can work on one-on-one with them. And that'll be an opportunity for them to improve their reading.
Thanks,
So I'm
Nina.
a big proponent. Sorry, I'm just a big proponent of orphing. And if you ever need ways of doing it, like I have 50 kids in my class, which that never happens. But if you did, like we'll figure it out, because I love that.
One of my favorites
so
is give them some handwriting to do while you do the oral reading fluency.
Perfect, right? Like have them do creative writing topic for that day. And so the kids are just like so engaged in their writing activity. And then you pull out one by one and you give them their, what is like 2 minutes you spend orphing a kid and you're
Exactly.
done. Yeah, so that's a great way. So we're going to have a chance to connect and discuss. I think we're going into a breakout room for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you guys to think about, what have you done or thought about since our last time together regarding unpacking standards? Maybe if you weren't in our last meeting, maybe you've done some thinking. Maybe you thought while I was talking about this, about unpacking standards and also determining what your students' needs are. And then we're going to go into breakout groups. You can share your thoughts in your breakout group. And then when we come back, if you guys could choose maybe one person in your group to share out a little bit of what you talked about, and then we'll engage in the next portion.
Oops. All right. So I'm going to make sure that every room has at least 3. They are relatively mixed. However, I do have one room that is for Vancouver Public Schools Heights location. If you are just Vancouver Public Schools and you just have VPS on your thing and you want to be in the Heights, please either change your name to Heights, or you can move to the Heights room once I open them. Nina, how much time do you think we want for this?
Did we say 5 minutes? Is that too much?
It might not be enough for those. I'll put 7.
Oh, we said 12 minutes.
I'll say, how about 8? No.
Okay, 8 is good.
Okay. All of our rooms are open, and I will pause our recording. And I will also share this to your rooms. It looks like if does anybody come in on after I made that? No. But if you want to be moved and you need help, let me know and I will move things around. Recording for this conversation, and here who would like to share for your rooms. We had, I think, 3 rooms. 3 or 4. I'll take a look. Who would like to start?
I'll go ahead and start, but if my Wi-Fi is glitchy, just let me know. Okay.
Sounds good.
So in our group, there was a couple of us who this is our first session, and we were not here for the your very first one. So we talked a little bit about assessments, and getting to hear. I think it was Jody was talking about using IXL to help diagnose and as a tool for progress monitoring, and just being able then to be able to meet the needs of her students. And then conversation too around making sure with assessments that we know what's the essential question we're trying to answer, meaning who's at risk, and is the work in progress monitoring is what I'm doing, helping, and then always aligning with that essential standard. And so making sure that that's there, and then the layers of assessing to help determine where students are at and what they need next.
Thank you, Jennifer. I see an appreciation from Heidi in the chat box as well. How about someone from one of the other 2 rooms? We had VPS Heights, and then we had another mixed room.
I'll go ahead and speak.
Thanks, Alyssa.
We kind of talked about what our school as a whole has been doing, because reading is one of our focuses. So we did iReady testing, maze testing, ORF testing. There's different types of programs. So we have different competencies, and then different classroom strategies that people are putting in place to help facilitate both discourse and writing and reading, because all that kind of goes together.
Of course it does, huh? They're 2 sides of the same coin. Thank you, Alyssa. Well, some of this new learning and resources that we jump into, and if the other group would like to contribute, please stop me at any time. Otherwise, maybe next time you'll be the first to contribute. Some of this may be a review if some of you attended the August session, but we felt like it was a good idea to bring it forward because we felt like there was enough of a need from our discussion from last time. So we're going to talk about the science of reading, and because too, and many people last time had said that they hadn't attended the August session. So this is going to be a review for some and new information for others. So this is from the ELA page, and I'm actually going to put these links. This is the ELA Learning Standards and Best Practices page. Down at the bottom, there's a section called Science of Reading, and it has a plus symbol where you can open it up. And so these are the links that you will find there from that page, and there are some additional resources from the Reading League, and there's also an improvingliteracy.org brief on the science of reading, the basics. So I'm going to read this, and then after I do, I invite you to underline, highlight, or put into the chat box a word or phrase that stands out to you. And we'll just kind of have a moment of talking about what stands out from this statement here. So the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. It has been added, and when I say scientifically based, that there is a rigorous review that those are going through, and when I say reading and writing, it's also on how it's taught. This research has been conducted over the last 5 decades or more across the world, and it is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading is culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. That was from the Reading League. We added on, when I say we, this was Heidi and Carrie's predecessor, Era Jackson. She and I crafted these next two pieces. The first is from the National Reading Panel, and the last one is our own. The evidence is clear. Explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension with a foundation of oral language ensures, I should add S to that students will excel in their literacy development. Explicit skill development, along with the great exposure to great literature and read alouds, ensures that all students will be able to access any type of reading independently. So thank you, Paulette, for waiting until I read it. She's saying explicit. Paulette, are you crossing that out or highlighting it? Jennifer has noted explicit. Should get my annotations back on. Paulette, would you like to unmute and comment on your, if you were highlighting or crossing out? Underlining. All right, you're drawing attention to. I've seen in the chat box exposure to great literature and read alouds. Access reading independently. Exposure, explicit instruction from Jennifer and Stephanie, a couple of those. Scientifically based research. In other words, doing studies of students and seeing how they're responding to the interventions. So just a start there on what we're talking about when we're talking about the science of reading. Thank you for engaging. So you remember earlier I mentioned that simple view of reading, and this is that formula that supports our understanding of reading comprehension, how we arrive there, and that it is really the ability to understand spoken language as well as to get the words off the page yourself. That's the decoding or the word reading. It's that transforming the print into spoken language. Although I will say that I went to a great session recently by Carol Tolman, who really emphasized, and this is something I want to shift into a lot of my PD, is that written language is not just spoken language written down. It's so much more complex. We, especially at the secondary level, we use conventions, we use prepositions, we use positives, we use supportive clauses, subordinating clauses that we don't use in when we speak. Written language is different when it comes to its construction than oral language. So we do have to be able to understand it if someone read it to us. But there is a lot more than that, just the words on the page. So I want us to think about that when it comes to decoding, particularly for our secondary kids. So we do have a few pieces here that I want to draw attention to, is that when we're talking about that simple view of reading, we're thinking about the fact that they need to have the language comprehension, that's the LC, and the word reading, that's the WR, in order to achieve reading comprehension, that's the RC. But that this is not static within a student. So this young child, he's reading a book at his level, he understands the context, he has background knowledge to access it. But if we gave that same kid, who can sound out pretty much any word he sees, but if we give him a text that has words he doesn't know or grammatical structures he's never seen, he's going to struggle to understand that text. So if you gave me a text on protein kinases or engineering, I'm going to struggle on those because I don't have the background knowledge. I don't necessarily understand the vocabulary nor those grammatical structures that are being used. The same could be the same if you gave, then we have another child. This is often our kids with dyslexia. Strong language comprehension. If you read it to them, you give them that auditory text, they're going to be successful. They struggle in getting the words off the page themselves. So you can see their weaknesses in the word reading aspect. So going on a little bit closer, the language comprehension piece, this is just a small snippet of understanding of it, of recognizing that language comprehension is huge. This is getting meaning out of spoken words, and it's when they are part of a sentence or other discourse. Notice how this image draws attention to the fact that this is different from decoding. When people say to me, oh, I've got this 7th grader and he reads at a 2nd grade level, I constantly want to go back to that simple view of reading and say, are you saying he comprehends at a 2nd grade level or he decodes at a 2nd grade level? Which is it we're talking about? Because comprehension is a very different beast, and it's very different to intervene and to pay attention to what his needs are if he's comprehending at a 2nd grade level versus decoding at a 2nd grade level. So back on the language comprehension, notice those different meanings for that word match. Most of our words are what we call polysemous or polysemous. If you think of poly meaning many and semous related to semantics, which means meaning. So you look at even a simple word like bat could mean an animal. It could be something you used to play baseball. It could be an action. I mean, so many of our words have multiple meanings, and that's what takes a lot of exposure to language and work with language, both orally and through text. We get so much of our language learning through our reading. So, of course, if we can't decode and we can't read and we struggle to read, we're going to be really building that much more slowly than our peers, won't we? So this is the building of and figuring out the words themselves and recognizing the connection between the sounds and the symbols. And that's, I think, the most key piece is recognizing that instead of having to go sound by sound, that then you want to be able to go in whole units. So recognizing here that TCH makes ch, or OUGH represents lots of different things. Don't take us to OUGH. But you do have a limited number. OUGH can't be but it could be it could be like an enough, it could be. So you get this set for variability and you learn what are the sound symbol correspondences that are going to be the probability of it going to be correct on this so that I can make that match. Because again, that goal is that skilled reading at the end here, this fluent reading coordination of and recognition and text comprehension. So I'm just going to pause this here for a moment because you will have an opportunity to kind of play around with this later. But thinking about what are the elements that go into understanding text, understanding language, and what does it go into being able to read the words yourself? And I will say that as somebody who taught elementary, middle, and then high, some of my kids learn some of these patterns or they had an idea. So, I mean, but it wasn't solid enough. They didn't always understand the why. So, for example, my daughter used to struggle with spelling the word to, and she put the O after it at the end because visually she remembers there's supposed to be a W there. And I'd have to tell her, no, that's toe. And the OW says O like in window, remember, or like snow, or it could be owl like cow, in which case that's tau. You want to. Where can you put that W where it's not going to make a sound? Because remember, twin and twist and 12. That W is going to go in the middle. I had older students working with a shun, and he'd spell the wrong one, but he needs to learn to connect it to the base word. So vacation is spelled with a T because it connects to vacate. So the more I know about words, it helps me understand not only the words themselves. I'm going to get my vanishing pen here. Is when I'm thinking about what are those individual words here in the vocabulary, but also how are they made? So what are the units of them, the morphemes, the syllables? How do I build this word in order to recognize it? And then what does it mean once I do? So hopefully this isn't new to you. If it is, feel free to take a screenshot and we'll definitely talk some more about that. But I want to give you an opportunity to take a quick little video exploration. Again, if you were here in August, choose a video that you didn't see now. If you weren't here in August, you have more options. So we're going to give you, why do I have, oops, it's going to start it. That's not what I meant to do. So let's stop that. There we go. Okay. Nope. Can I go back? Okay, that's what happens if I keep going. So we have two different videos and we're going to give you options, and those are in the resources. Nina, maybe you could put those video links into the chat for people. And we're going to give you about 5 minutes. So the one on the bottom from Hill Learning Center is actually 4 minutes, and the one on the top is 7. We suggest to do this section from about 2 minutes through 6 minutes-ish. And we'll open breakout rooms for you to debrief this section. We'll give you a little bit of a discussion. And at the same time, we're going to give you the option of looking at the GM board. So you can talk about and looking at this language comprehension rope as well. So we're going to do a short breakout room for you to talk after you watch the movie. So I'll stop the recording while you're watching your little video. You can choose which one and have a conversation with people. You can see, did you watch the same one? Did you watch different? What did you learn? And think about, as you're watching, are you a learner understanding this topic better? Are you a designer designing instruction? I heard, so at least one of you is a TOSIF and does professional development. Are you a leader? Do you want to think about how to build others' knowledge and practice around this content? So I'm going to pause the recording, give you time to, we'll give you 5 minutes to be in your rooms, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to have a quick, 5 minutes to give a quick conversation. So watch the video and then in breakout room to discuss it. Resume recording. We don't have a lot of time for breaking out for conversations, but I hope you had a good one. Although I do want to open it to see if there's something that you'd like to question or throw out as a gem that you heard, or were there any thoughts on this? And as you know, and tried it on this one, you might have tried it on your own, particularly in contrast to number 5, the more broken apart, simple view of reading by Hoover and Tumner. Go ahead, Nadia.
In our Heights group, we talked about just the vocabulary piece and how we can't assume that students know the definition to a word. And we talked about in the context of like math or science, when we're talking about like a table, we're not talking about something you eat at. It's a data set. So making sure to pre-teach those vocabulary words.
Particularly because of the polysemous nature of our words. Thank you, Nadia. How about someone else? Go ahead, Paul. Hi.
Hi. I'm in a room with a lot of secondary teachers, and we were discussing a couple of things. One, if I am a gen ed teacher and I've got a kid who I know is struggling to decode in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, that kid I hope is getting some services, but I can't put all of that on the teacher giving the services. I'm also this kid's teacher. So like, what do I do then in the 50 minutes that I have the kid? What are there tips and tricks that can help me, given all of this knowledge, this really wicked cool knowledge that I just got from the video? What do I do with that to help that kid in the time that I have him? And we were curious if there has been any research around kids learning their second language. And if and I would imagine that if I am coming to English and my first language is Spanish, that a lot of my skills that I used to learn Spanish as a young child are going to be applicable when I go to learn English, because it's going left to right and most of the letters make most of the same sounds. And I would imagine that would be different if my first language were Arabic or Korean or something else. And then that brings me back to the same question. All right, so if I am, I'm the social studies teacher and I'm working hard on that. Like, what can I do? How does this knowledge help me to reach that kid? I've got this knowledge now, but I'm actually feeling a little bit more frustrated now that I have the knowledge because I don't know what to do with it.
I get it. I do, because I mean, that's one of the things that I try very, very hard not to overwhelm. It doesn't usually work. But Paul, I mean, that's one of the reasons why this is a long ongoing piece. And when we talk about the series, I'm going to bring up the agenda on that. Whoops, not that one. I didn't mean to go back to number 1. I went to here, number 13, the series itself. that particularly next month, when we're going to talk about the decoding and encoding, those are your kids who are struggling to get the words off the page themselves. And then we're skipping December. In January, we're going to be working on strategies for the vocabulary piece. So right now we're starting to build that awareness, but I agree, you need to know now, how can I help my kids notice that every word has a syllable? How do I help make sure that they're paying attention to syllabification in order to sound the words out? So I think that's a really important first step. And I think that's, you might have noticed that here I have on this sticky, the word sight within quotes. And I'm going to actually put that over here in the word recognition side. The reason why it's in quotes is that the reality of a sight word is that every word aspires to be a sight word when it grows up. In other words, any word that we see, unless it's something like that you don't use very often, this one I bet may not necessarily be a sight word for everyone. You might have to sound that out and think epitome. Nope, epitome. There we go. So that might not be a sight word for you, but pretty much any word you can see and recognize automatically, that's what's called a sight word. And so that's, but the thing is, how do you help your kids get there? Is really through a lot of those where's my thingy here? It's through building their decoding skills, through making sure they can understand the sounds of the language. I'm going to sort these for us here. But yes, you're right. We need to be working on all of these pieces. Is it a little overwhelming for the classroom teacher? Tremendously. But we take one, we have to help our kids have hope and have research and explore and learn. And two, recognize that there are only 26 letters in our language, as Paul, you had mentioned, with some of our languages like Spanish. But unlike Spanish, we have about 18 or 19 vowel sounds. Spanish has 5. So we have about 44 sounds in our language, represented by 26 letters, that we combine in 300 or 400 different ways in what's called graphemes. And so that's what we help our kids recognize, that, as I mentioned earlier, OUGH, that has a limited number of different sounds it could make. IGH represents the I sound, unless it's preceded by an E, in which case it's A, like an ate and slay and way. But it's helping our kids recognize those patterns and calling them out and saying, you're right. Here's a statistical pattern that I can recognize, and here's how we can sound out those words. And with our secondary students, they couple this information up. Let's go to my favorite website, Edam Online, and let's learn the story of a word when you're talking about the vocabulary. And going to your question of, I'm going to put this in the chat box for us, of second language learners. Yes, there has been a lot of research saying that as I gain a competency in my second language, I'm gaining competency in my first, and they support each other. And that there's the bilingual brain that's getting a lot of attention, the bilingual structured literacy. I'm going to give you an example here of rodeo. What I love about this site is that it gives us a story. Notice how it says this was from the Spanish rodeo, which meant a pen for cattle or market. So it gives you that story to hang your hook on instead of memorizing things. You're learning the why behind it. I hope that answered in a brief, but recognizing that this is huge. Paul, one more resource I want to give you too. When you mentioned the multilingual learners, on the OSPI website, there is a link to some presentation summaries and videos from our Science of Reading Summit we had last May. And there are 2 in particular that I'll draw attention to when you mention multilingual learners. Well, one, no, not Tracy's. I was going to say Julia Esparza Brown has an MTSS framework for meeting students who are multilingual learners. And then down, Julie Washington talks about biliteracy, different dialectal varieties. And then I think down at the bottom is Elsa Cardenas Hagen. Yes, who talks about structural literacy among English learners. So these have some resources and videos of these speakers as well. More learning, sorry.
These are such great resources. I just want to add one other thing, Paul. Not to again add more, but Elisa, thank you for all of those. I spot on. I would just say, Paul, I think you also hit it when you talked about other folks in the building who might be supporting that student. And just, I'm sure you're already, many of us that are working with students who are struggling to read are communicating with the other folks in the building, because it is a support system. And so just thinking about who is there to support that student. Exactly. Yes. And within that MTSS framework, thank you, Alicia. How can that system really work for that student? And I think that's really important in secondary, when we can be very siloed. We can feel very isolated. So it just can be very helpful in that respect.
Who's in that system to support us? So thank you. All right, so feel free to jump back in if there's something else you want to join in on. Let's get into a little bit about structured literacy, and then we'll give you more opportunity to talk with Heidi gives you an opportunity to practice this stuff. So when we're talking about structured literacy, science of reading is the why, structured literacy is the how. So we started with the 6 components that the National Reading Panel has found that every student needs in order to be a successful reader and writer. Particularly reading, it was the National Reading Panel. However, notice how we've put those, what people often call the pillars, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary comprehension, on that base of oral language skills. So Paul, this speaks to our second language learners, our multilingual students, our multilingual learners. We need to develop their oral language skills just like we need to develop everybody else's, and their path and their distance from what they know to the standard language that we are teaching them may be different, as is the whole conversation we mentioned by dialectalism. They've found that the further your dialect is from standard, the more of a challenge you're going to have in your literacy development. So it's that oral language skills that we need to really be equalizing here in school and developing and supporting, because it supports all of the rest of the literacy skills. So we can map these to the simple view of reading. And I will say, I apologize for all of these arrows, but it's complicated. As soon as I start learning to read, my language comprehension is supported by and supports my oral language skills and my vocabulary and my fluency and comprehension, but also my phonemic awareness, my decoding skills. These are all built on and based upon each other. When we made this together, I said, you got to keep adding more arrows. I'm sorry. But it just really shows the complexity that it's not a really simple translation from how we read to how we teach it. It's very complex. I have another stab that I don't have, I'm not sure if I fixed it in our resource guide, but I will get a link for you of our structured literacy overview here in Washington. And actually, I'll go grab the link for it right now. I think I still have it up. No, this one is it. So our structured literacy overview in Washington, this came through looking at the definition of structured literacy by the International Dyslexia Association, looking at other institutions of professional development. So I'm going to put this into the chat box for you. And this is a way I summarized it. We're having an infographic of what those elements are. And we're going to talk about each one of them in a moment. But you'll notice the stair steps of those foundational skills, that oral language knowledge and proficiency. We work toward the top, comprehending written language, but we have to have that base of oral language at the bottom. And then what you see around the outside is the how. So inside is the what, outside is the how. And you need to be teaching our kids, particularly those who are struggling, in a direct and explicit way. In fact, I'm going to give you a handout that spells out from a colleague of mine who worked particularly with secondary kids. And I'm not sure if I put this anywhere else, so I'm going to give it to you guys. I have to think about where it is. I'm going to go to, I can give you lots and lots of stuff, but I'm going to just get you there. I think it's under tinyurl.com. I think it's under, I know I could get it this way. Now, if you all want all of this stuff, you're totally welcome to it, but there's a lot here. But I'm going to get you to this handout from one of my colleagues who taught kids with dyslexia, particularly in middle school and high school. And she and I did a presentation together on secondary struggling readers for the International Dyslexia Association. Her name is Kate Franken. And so it's the Franken handouts. And when I talk about direct and explicit, systematic, sequential, where's the Franken? You have access to all of these, but I'm just gonna pull this up for you. And see, this happens when you click too many things. You think that you get ideas at the last minute. Here you go. Is making sure that you are assuming responsibility and providing kids with what they need, and helping them understand that especially as they're older, this might take some work. This is that engaged struggle piece. So I'm going to put these resources in for you so that you can access all of this. Going back to that list of what we have here, it's thanks, Heidi. That we do it in a sequential, systematic way, so we're not missing anything. And if there are holes that they have missed, we check and see what those were. As somebody who taught, like I said, high school special education, I had a lot of kids who had missed those pieces. And then, of course, the multisensory, multimodal is engaging all of the senses in that. So let's break those down. I mentioned some of those foundational skills. That would be your oral language, and I did click, here it comes, your knowledge of orthographic conventions, your phonological and phonemic awareness. So these are those pieces, kind of what Paul, you were talking about, those kids who struggle with their decoding. That would be here your foundational skills. And then, this is an explanation, and this is all in that handout I put in the chat box for you. So if you want to go in and look more, but you can see it's complex. Understanding phonemes and understanding the sounds of our words is made up of understanding syllables and first sounds and ending sounds, and how if I change the word clash to crash, I have a whole new word. And for some kids, that's a learning experience, recognize that. And then, of course, how are those written in print? That's that letters and sounds and syllables and morphemes I've made reference to already. Then when we're talking about knowledge, this is our vocabulary piece. Syntax, pragmatics, language use, culture comes in here as well. And then, of course, knowing what those words mean. And of course, all along the way, we need to do these in a way that is fluent. It's automatic. So it's not on the front burner, it's on the back burner. If you think about when you drive, you don't think about which foot and which pedal. It's automatic now, isn't it? This is what we want for our reading and writing skills as well. So that hence we can read and write quickly and easily, and we can use our own vocabulary and pragmatics and syntax skills in order to do that. How does this look over? And I'm giving you a lot. Heidi's going to give you an application time to talk about and play with it soon. But how does this look like over the span of your learners? Notice how I put a yellow box for both of these over our elementary. Your learners should have those foundational skills. Notice those yellow boxes are kind of those foundational skills. But notice too, the elements that continue going on always is your decoding skills, your fluency skills, your spelling, your keyboarding skills. You're always going to get better at those. But notice down on the bottom, I'm always going to be learning more words. My oral language is always going to be increasing. My background knowledge is always going to be increasing, as is my learning about text structure and narratives and informative different kinds of texts. And my writing processes, those are going to be stronger and more needed in the upper grades. But I need to make sure that they have what they need, and they in those that K through 5. We look at our standards, so often they don't address foundational skills after 5th grade. We assume they've got them. And how many of you are here because your kids struggle with those? So those are an area where our kids could be struggling too. So I'm going to put a resource that has these images for you into the chat box, as well as on the next slide, I have some links that came from the ELA website, where we could be learning a lot more about the science of reading and structured literacy. I'm going to put all these into the chat box for you. And then if anybody needs to take a quick little stand and stretch before we go into Heidi's application section, we have a little break built in. So you've been sitting for too long. Let's take, what do you think, Heidi and Nina, full 5 minutes, or do we want to give them less? It's like 5 minutes. Wow.
I think we ingested a lot of information too. We might need a minute before we talk about that.
Sounds good. I will pause the recording. We'll give everyone a stand and stretch. And when you come back, Heidi's going to lead us through an opportunity to practice this and think about this in an application way. And
And one for
resume recording. Didn't we have fun with that?
Yeah.
Actually, I think I already took one of the things, didn't we?
Yeah, it's okay.
That's all right. We have another one, don't we?
Oh, yeah. So welcome back to everyone. Hopefully you got a little stretch there. And so what we want to do now is just give you a chance just to debrief some of what you've heard, what you're thinking, what's on your mind. And so we're going to go into breakout rooms, and in those breakout rooms, we'll discuss the skills and knowledge that are necessary to understand language and how to read words. And how do you support students with these processes? Thanks for highlighting that, Alicia. Specifically thinking about language comprehension and word recognition. So we have our Jamboard open and ready to support you. And we'd love for you to post your thoughts on frame 4. There is that image on frame 5, which Alicia, I think is on the next slide of this. So you can compare what you're posting to the figure that's on frame 5 as well, which we've looked at a couple times already today. But again, I think multiple exposures to this material was very helpful for me as I was learning and integrating and thinking about how students learn to read and what that might mean for secondary students. So we're hoping that you really find that useful as well. So again, we'll go into breakout rooms, thinking how you support students. What are some of those skills that they need, thinking specifically about language comprehension, word recognition. Alicia, anything else you want to say before we open those breakout rooms?
I just want to invite people to add in any stickies as far as what you can do, what your strategies you know of, what you're kind of like thinking a pre-assessment of, like I said, next time we'll be talking more about the word recognition, and then the following month more about, in January, about language comprehension. So you can add stickies either to this one or to this one. And if you just have some takeaways that you want to share from your breakout room, you can add those here as well.
Absolutely.
And we will have a summary when we come back. We want to give you some time to kind of collaborate and talk and think. And also I will put, as you're doing that, I will also, because in case you want to jump into all those resources and explore more as part of your conversation, I'll put this into the chat box for you as well. This is the links to resources that I do for all of my classes, which are delving into all of the aspects of structured literacy. It's for those of you who want to. If it's overwhelming, don't go there.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to add, if this is your first time in a class with Alicia, you'll know Alicia is a brilliant presenter and a brilliant collector of resources. So we're always very thankful for those, Alicia. All right.
All right. Thank you, Heidi. I will share this in your. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to chat with each other in your groups and share some wonderful knowledge. We are going to talk a little bit about some of our takeaways during our breakout time. Perfect timing. All right, Alicia, I was letting them know we're going to talk about what we were talking about in our breakout groups.
Perfect. Thank you for re-recording, and let's hear from some of the breakout takeaways. Who would like to start? Stephanie, go ahead if you can unmute.
So we spoke about vocabulary being one of the top things for understanding language, and also how background knowledge is also fundamental. And then we talked a lot about ELL students and how we can provide like the best experience for them in our classrooms. And so kind of, I guess the takeaway from that is exposing them to like the richest experience that we can give them in whatever language makes sense. Preferably, English, but not to exclude them from the classroom, to make sure they're being able to have those conversations with peers and be a part of everything. So just build it.
I think I cut you off there, Stephanie, sorry. You were done? All right, I'm adding in, I'm hearing that they need to be a part of everything to build their oral language and their background knowledge. That's like everyone. Thank you for that. How about someone else?
We kind of spoke about that background knowledge too, in that context with students, and recognizing that things have different meanings in different contexts. I think we were talking about like safety. One of the examples, I think that was right. I think Angela had shared is about safety and how in football safety means one thing, but then you can also think about safety another way. I know we talked a little bit about that with math and science and different words that way. That also mean earlier. Nadia had said something about that.
Thanks, Alyssa. Hopefully I've caught it enough. It's kind of hard for me to hear you. Nina, were you able to hear better?
No, I
just
think
said
you got it all. Yeah.
Okay. The polysemous
Multiple
nature
meaning
words.
words and the importance of making sure that there's opportunities to talk about that.
Thank you, Alyssa. How about something else? Strategies that you shared or things that you do to help support your students in either side, or what bridges the language comprehension, what bridges the two sides? What are some things that you chatted about? Heidi, you were in a group. Do you want to share for your group?
I speak too much for my group and take up too much of the space here, but we had a wonderful conversation. We didn't add to the Jamboard because we were too busy talking, but one of my takeaways was just about how everyone's a reading teacher, right? And I think, Alyssa, this goes to what you're saying, that it happens throughout the disciplines, and how we talked a little bit about how we get other disciplines to see themselves also as reading teachers, because just because students leave the ELA class or the ELA lesson doesn't mean they're not reading and writing, right? So what does that look like? And I know my group was like, how can I share this with like everyone in my building? So that was our big takeaway.
Thank you, Heidi. I definitely think that that's a really crucial piece, particularly when we're talking about the language comprehension side. That is in every subject area. And how do we, Alyssa, I loved you used the example of safety. I mean, or think about the word divide, and you have the division of cells, and you have the division of government, and you have division in math. I mean, I can't think of an ELA example of literature, but maybe one of you can. But nonetheless, that we have to think about the vocabulary is really, really crucial. And how do we help build those strengths? And then as well, making sure that we're building their word reading skills and making sure they've got those concepts down. And I mean, I think it was Paul who was asking, what do we do when they don't? That's where we have to think about, how do I build up particularly their decoding skills and make sure that they have those sound symbol connections strongly linked so that they can get it right, and then build their getting it accurate first, and then getting it automatic. I'll add that in as well. I see something in the chat, or did I see Jennifer wanted to share? A division fighting in the battlefield. Yeah, so many different ways with that. But here, connecting sounds and symbols, because that can be very complex in our language. It's that's how we get to our accuracy. I think that's what I wanted to add in, is getting it right first, and then building the automaticity, building accuracy, then automaticity. Building accuracy so we can get automatic. How about someone else? We've heard at least one per person per room, but you can also add on something that you wanted to add to the conversation, that either from something that's already been said, or something that you heard, or a connection you've made.
Canada.
Alyssa, I saw your hand go up.
Another, I guess what I thought of as like a strategy and something that I use is like highlighting in math. So we highlight important words in our problems. And then or sometimes in what we're working on, we'll highlight or underline, well, what's the action word that we have to do, and what's the and then what is the vocabulary we need to know? Because I feel like that's in math, it's really about building a lot of vocabulary with the computation, and at least to decipher the problems. But that's just a personal kind of, I guess. Those are,
and then helping them recognize why you're underlining them, helping them see the connections is okay. We're gonna highlight them now. Let's talk about them and let's figure out the connections. I think that's particularly key. When I think of if you have division, you said in math, the ION is making it into an action, or a noun. It's the division. We divide. There's our action, our verb, but this is the division of something. This is the creation of something in science. You can connect to other words that have that same suffix.
I'm actually going to take that, the TION. I didn't even think about that as we have rotation. So sorry. Thank you.
There you go. Rotate, rotation, divide, division. And you can see how that ION suffix is going to make that adjustment for you. Angela, did you want to add on as well?
I did want to add on a practice that I did see is before reading like an article, the teacher would show a list of words and have the students in their table groups discuss which words they know or which words are familiar. And that kind of breaks the ice and makes them a little more comfortable. And then the next question is like, which word have you not heard before? And as a formative assessment, you get to understand what students do know or not. And sometimes that is where those words like that have multiple meanings, you're like, oh, wait, no, that's not the direction. And that was very great to see that being practiced. And it really helped to kind of continue with the article and having everyone on the same page.
And I recognize I may know it in this context, but in another context, it might be something very different. Thanks, Angela. I'm going to take us back to our slide deck for our closure and next steps. Heidi, did you want? I can't remember if this was you or me. Closing out. Nina, Heidi, whomever. All right, so we just have a reminder of our resource guide here, where you can find all of the pieces, reminder of our next dates. We had our framework reminder, which we had already talked about, so I can just skip through that. To our series. Next time we will be meeting at the end of this month. Instead of December, we have like a late November and then an early late January. We're skipping December because of the holidays. So we'll be focusing on the lower strands of the rope, those foundational skills, and making sure our kids can sound out words we've never seen before by breaking apart and connecting the sound symbol correspondences and using their syllabification knowledge and morphemes. And then you can see where we'll be going from there. We do ask that you either put something into the chat box or the Jamboard, something that you want to take with you that you've gleaned from tonight, or something that means something to you. So it's something I used to do is like, what are you taking? Why is it important? And now what are you going to do? That's more than we're asking you to do in the last 2 minutes. But just to kind of take a moment to think, to reflect, and to kind of wrap all of these things with you to take it away. And then of course, I love how I think this was yours, Nina, to just breathe. I'm thinking about our boxing breathing. Like you said, 2 to 1 breathing. I've heard of the boxing breathing where you breathe 4. Is that 2 to 1 yours, Nina?
I don't think so.
Yours, Heidi?
Breathe enough.
I wonder who put that in. 2 to 1. You slowly inhale for a count to 3 and exhale for a count to 6. The exhale is longer than the inhale. I will try that. We have the resources we shared with you on the resource guide. Plus, we have some asynchronous courses that these are linked on the guide, where you can find. These are classes you can take at any time on your own pace, and they're all free via OSPI. One thing I will add down to this one on the bottom where it says for school psychologists, anyone can take it, and you recommend that anybody who wants to go deeper on dyslexia can take that as well. There are also a whole bunch of synchronous classes. These are also linked on your on your guide. So these you can see our all day classes. The next one we'll be doing is on November 15th on phonology. We're going full day deeply into all of these different areas of structured literacy. And we have our contacts. Mine is arobertsfrank@esd113.org. You can see rebecca.estock for her. She'll be joining us when she can. We have Nina and we have Effie and Nina Andrew 22@gmail and Effie at ESD112. And we have Heidi and Terry as well. Heidi.ayala, that J. Heidi, what is the language origin of your name?
It's Finnish.
Finnish. Oh, I like that. A learning experience.
Yeah.
And we thank everyone for all of your engagement. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I do have a few minutes if anybody has any last minute questions or preparation thoughts for our next session today or next time.